Welcome to today's webinar entitled Writing a Case Report, Where Do You Start? With Jerrilyn Cambron. This is the first webinar in a series of 5 that we're doing with the Massage Therapy Foundation on writing case reports. And we at ABMP are very excited to offer these to you. Jerrilyn Cambron is a professor in the Department of Research at the National University of Health Sciences. Her focus there is on complementary and alternative medicine research, that's CAM, and evidence-based practice. Now, she's been involved in CAM research for over 25 years now and has published extensively in scientific literature. Jerrilyn is also currently the president-elect of the Massage Therapy Foundation. We are very honored to have her with us today, and welcome, Jerrilyn.
Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate it, and thanks to ABMP for hosting this for us. As Brian said, I work with the foundation, and one of the things that we always want to do is to reach out to massage therapists in the field, particularly ones who want to get involved in research. And one of the most common questions we get from them is, how do I write a case report? And so we thought that this would be a good series to put on for people and archive it. We also think that this might be something helpful to educators and students in order to know how do we write case reports. So it was our education committee that came up with it. It was the committee is led by Jan Schwartz, so I just want to thank her for making this happen. And again, we're just so pleased to be working with ABMP with this and to have this actually presented. So with this case report series, we've divided it up into 5 different areas, topic areas. So I'm going to be the first one to go. This is me sitting in my office where I am right now today, smiling at all of you. Hello, everyone. And what I'm going to be talking about is some of the kind of the startup as to how do you even think about writing a case report? How do you choose a case to report? How do you choose a journal, an audience? How do you do all of this and get started with it? So I'm pretty excited to set the stage for the other 4 presenters and hopefully get you excited and ready to do this. The second webinar that we have is Ruth Werner, and you've probably heard Ruth Werner's name. She's a well-known author and also the president of the Massage Therapy Foundation. And she's been a member of our case report review committee since 2007. And so she's been there with us reviewing the case reports that are submitted to the Massage Therapy Foundation's case report contest. We have contests for the practitioners and a separate contest for students. And so if you're interested in possibly participating and winning money, you might want to check out the foundation and look at the instructions, follow those instructions, take a look at the deadlines, and submit your case report to us where we will review it and choose the winners. So what Ruth is going to talk about in the next session is 2 different sections in case reports. The case reports are generally structured first with an introduction, then the presentation of the case, and then the discussion section. Now Ruth is kind of presenting the 2 bookends around the actual case report. The introduction section, it sets the stage for the case report. It kind of gives some background to the condition being talked about. Perhaps the introduction section also discusses some alternate treatments, other conservative care measures that might be beneficial. And it really frames the case as to why is this topic important, why is this case important, right before the author launches into the case. And so the introduction sets the stage. This is something that many people aren't used to doing. It requires citations. You have to look in the literature and see what has been written on this topic before. Have there been any case reports on this or even clinical trials on this topic before? And so there's things that people tend to forget or leave out of the introduction section, and Ruth will be discussing that. And then after the case report section comes the discussion. And Ruth will be covering that as well. In the discussion section, we look for the author to discuss how does this case fit into the literature that's already out there. And so it's kind of like the introduction, but now the discussion is discussing this case in the bigger picture. Implications for this case, possibly policy changes or future research. And so the introduction and discussion sections are quite challenging to people, and not something that most people are familiar with writing. So Ruth will be covering those, and we're very excited that she'll be doing that. The third webinar that we have planned for you guys is the actual case section. And this will be provided or done by Karen Boulanger. She is a researcher and also a full-time massage therapist. I think Karen is the perfect person to be discussing this because not only has she also served on the case report contest committee, but she's also the practice section editor of the International Journal of Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork. What that means is if you plan on submitting to the journal called IJTMB, you will be submitting it to Karen as the practice section editor. And she's the person who takes a look at it initially. She works with authors. She sends it out for review. And so she's seen a lot of different things. And I know she has a lot of good suggestions for how to make your case report the very best possible. And what she's going to be talking about is that section where you actually describe the case. And so Ruth's talking about the two bookends surrounding it, and Karen's talking about the case itself. So she's going to talk about how do you actually describe the client? What do you need to include? Do you need to talk about outcome measures? How did you actually measure if the client got better? What was your intervention? What type of massage did you do? How much detail do you need to include in that? And the results of the case. So she'll be telling you how do you, what's the best way to describe the case without too much detail and without not enough detail. What is actually expected to be included in that section. Next, we have something that's a little bit different that a lot of people aren't aware of. They're called research posters. Now, research posters are another way that people can present their case reports, but if you're feeling like you're not really ready to write a full manuscript, a full case report for submission to a scientific journal, a research poster might be a good first step. And so research posters are a more succinct version of the case, and they're very visual, and they're usually about, I'm going to say like 3 feet by 6 feet. And what happens is at scientific conferences, there are research poster sessions where in one room there might be a whole bunch of posters put up on the walls or on boards, and the authors will stand in front of their research poster, and all of the participants of the conference can walk around and actually ask the author questions about their case or about their research study and really interact with the researchers. So research posters, sometimes they're done if you submit for publication, submit a case report for publication. You can do also a research poster about that, or you can just submit for publication or just have a research poster. So we think that doing research posters is something that you might want to consider, perhaps if you're an educator, having your students do that and posting them in the school hallways. If you're in practice, you may want to develop a research poster and put that up in your waiting room. If you're feeling really bold and ready for it, you can submit your abstract, the research poster abstract, to a scientific conference, have it reviewed, and if it's accepted, then you get to go to the conference and have people take a look at it and talk to you and ask you about it. So we're really excited to talk to you about research posters. Kim Gorel-Stevenson is a wonderful person to do this. She presented this topic at AMTA National, and it was very well received. Now, Kim is a massage therapist, but she also has her master's degree from the University of Wisconsin system. And right now she works at Boston University in the Clinical and Translational Science Institute as an evaluation research analyst. So she has a really good balance between research and actual practice of massage therapy.
Jerrilyn?
Yes?
Amy emailed in and wanted to know how research posters are different from infographics.
Infographics. I'm not exactly sure what that is.
Okay, Amy, if you go ahead and give us some more information, we can ask at the end then. Thanks, Jerrilyn.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah. So, the last person that we have presenting is Rose Tonko. Now, what we thought would be really important to our listeners is hearing somebody talk about it, you know, from the battlefield, who's actually out there and practicing and doing their thing, and they wrote a case report. Now, Rosemary Tonko, she's been practicing in Plano, Texas since 2003, and she decided that it was time for her to write a case report, and she did just that, and she ended up being our gold medal winner in our practitioner case report contest in 2010. So we're real proud of her, and she's very, very bright, and she actually now is on our case report contest review committee as well. So not only has she done this from the field, but she's also seeing firsthand what types of submissions we're getting. So several of us are on this case report contest review committee, and so we see what's coming in, and so we have very good suggestions as to how to make sure that what you're submitting is complete and exactly what we're looking for. So Rose is going to talk about some of the challenges that she encountered when she was writing the case report. She's going to give some tips and some encouraging reasons why students and practitioners should consider writing a case report. And she's just going to give you a real-life lowdown on what was this like, and what problems did she have, and you know, what successes did she have. So we're extremely excited about this series of 5 different webinars. We think that they're all very important. Of course, you can pick and choose which ones you feel like coming to, but we think that this is a really strong, structured webinar series for people who are interested in writing case reports. So I'd like to get started. Again, this is me smiling at you. Hello, everybody. And I think that we're going to have fun with this. I'm really hoping that everybody out there gets excited and wants to get started right away. So the first thing I'd like to do is do a poll. I'd like to know, have you ever submitted a case report for scientific publication?
Okay, great. So I've launched the poll. Well, it looks like everybody's using the question box. Well, that's okay too. You should be able to answer it on your screen though. All right, we'll go ahead and close it.
This is kind of like doing research for me, but it's instantaneous results, so I just love it.
All right, so I'm going to say everybody but 2 people.
Wow.
Everybody, go ahead.
Everybody has submitted, or
everybody has not? Yeah, only 2 people.
Okay.
Only 2 people have.
But we do have 2 people. You know, I figured that there would be some people in the audience that have submitted a case. And I think it's great to have them along because perhaps at the end they might have a few things to say about their experience as well. Perhaps. We'll see if we have time for that. But the majority of you have not submitted a case report for a scientific publication. And that's great because this is right where we're at. And I just want to start this out by defining what is a case report. I just saw last night on Facebook somebody had asked this very question. And so here's a definition of a case report. This came from Martha Brown Menard's book, Making Sense of Research, and she says that a case report is a method of descriptive research that documents a practitioner's experiences, thoughts, or observations related to the care of a single patient. So in essence, it's that it's a report of a cool case that you had. And what I tell people to think about is, you know, when you're at a dinner party or a get-together and you're talking to other massage therapists and they say, hey, have you seen anything interesting? It's that case that you pull out of your back pocket and say, wow, I saw this really interesting case and here's how it went. If you're so excited that you want to talk about that and the other people that you tell that story to are engaged in the conversation, that might be a good case to write a case report about. Now sometimes there's something called a case series. If the same observation happened over and over and over with different clients, you might want to, in one article, talk about them at the same time. Perhaps it happened in 2 clients or 3 clients. Case reports are more common than case series. And the way that case reports usually happen, at least in allopathic medicine, is retrospectively. Now the word retrospective is like, you've heard of retro music, it means music from the past. Well, a retrospective case report means you're going along in practice and you're seeing clients and you're doing good, and you come across that case and you finish it, the case or the client is released from care, and you sit back and you think, you know what, that was really interesting. And so you write it up after the fact. And that's usually what happens, is we have these interesting cases and then we think, I really should write that one up. That was very interesting. The case reports can happen prospectively as well. A prospective case report is one in which you think about, well, the next person that comes in with X condition, I want to really take good notes, and I want to use these outcome measures to assess whether or not they're doing better, and I'm going to treat them for this number of times, and you plan it ahead of time. Now, I work with a lot of different practitioners, mostly chiropractors, on writing case reports, but now I'm getting more into the massage therapist field. And what I tell them is consider every single person that comes to you as a potential case report, because you never really know when something cool is going to happen. And so it's good to make sure that you're always keeping in the back of your mind, take good notes and use good outcome measures and document everything. The other thing I want to point out with this definition is that it's descriptive research. I point that out because sometimes people will call case reports research. I'm doing research. And the thing that, because I'm a full-time researcher, I get a little nervous about the language that's being used. And it is still descriptive research, but you shouldn't be doing experimental research in your office or in the schools. And what I mean by that is, with experimental research, that means that you decide that you're going to experiment on people and try, maybe you developed a new electric stim unit, or you have some new really deep technique and you want to try it on the next 5 people that come in. It might not be ethical for you to be doing that. And so with case reports, this is regular clinical practice. Now, in clinical practice, do we ever experiment and see, does maybe this type of technique will help my client instead? I'm going to switch things up and try something new with them. Is that an experiment? Well, it's not an experimental research study. That's more clinical practice and critical thinking. And so it's okay to plan things out and try new things with clients and see, and quote, experiment with them. But it's not the same thing as doing experimental research like clinical trials and, testing new drugs and things like that. So we just have to be careful with our language, as well as be careful with what we're doing in practice and not, doing experiments on people, especially without ethical oversight. Some schools may have ethical oversight committees. They're called IRB, or Institutional Review Boards. And those IRBs are the ones that say yes or no that it's okay for you to do this research project. Typically with case reports, they're not considered experimental research, so they don't go through the IRB. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear as to what a case report is and what it isn't. Usually it's what happens in clinical practice, and it's something that a practitioner wants to report and tell others about. So there's different times that case reports are written. They're not just, oh, I saw a cool client and that was it, and here's how I treated them and they got better. I mean, that's the most common time. But there are other types of case reports, and I want to go through these so that you can make sure that your mind is really thinking broadly as to all the different things that you could present in a case report. Now, the first thing on here is a new disease or condition. Do you think those come up very, very often? No. Not really, right? I mean, we've had swine flu and bird flu and things like that, and those have come up across the years, but it's really not very common, and we won't be diagnosing new diseases or conditions. But there are, in our practices, rare or sparsely reported conditions. You might have a very interesting person that comes to you, very odd or different or unique conditions that you're treating. And that might be, they might come in with some unusual presentation of a common condition as well. And those types of clients might be very interesting for others to read about. Now, this bullet point says new or unique treatment. If you think about new or unique treatments, I'm not just talking about, did you come up with a new treatment? I'm talking about what would the healthcare field that's reading these research articles consider new or unique. They may not know that massage therapy can help all the conditions that it does. And so it's important, and it's our job to make sure that we educate people outside of our professions and say, hey, guess what? Massage therapy benefits this condition. To them, that might be something new or unique, and they might then want to refer to you or perhaps even use massage therapy within their own practice. And so to them, it's new or unique. Now, there are certainly times when massage therapists come up with their own technique, and that's really interesting for the rest of the profession to read about that as well. And so there's a couple of different ways that this new or unique treatment could be written up, lots of different conditions or cases that this could be written up. This next bullet point is not so much fun. This is unexpected complications during treatment. So if you're doing massage on a client and something goes wrong, this might be a good case to write up to inform your peers. You know what? This is what happened. I don't want this to happen to anyone else within our profession. And so I'm letting you know that in this condition, using this technique, this didn't go very well. And so even though it's not something that we're ever excited to hear about, or that we want to think that massage doesn't hurt anyone, but sometimes things happen. And it's important for us as a profession to make sure that others are educated on what happened and how can we prevent that from happening again. And finally, I have on here unexpected outcome for one condition when treating for another. So let's say you have a client that comes in for, let's say, back pains, and you're doing massage and they're feeling good, and they get off the table and they say, you know what? I had menstrual cramps today and now they're gone. I didn't expect that. That's not why I was being treated, but I'm so thankful to you that you fixed that. And that might be a wonderful case report as well, just letting people know that's not what I was treating for, but that's what got better for them. So again, I encourage you to think broadly about all the different types of case reports that can be written, and not to just narrow yourself to only, I treated with this and patients got better. One of the big criticisms that case reports get is that they're very weak evidence and that they don't really matter. And to me, this is frustrating, because when we look at the level of evidence, we have lots of different types of study designs. So we have systematic reviews. Those are articles that compile lots of different articles on a certain topic and for treatment of certain conditions. We have clinical trials. Those are the strongest single study design. We have some observational studies. Then we have our case reports and case series. Then we have things like editorials and opinions and and things like that. And so case reports really are just one above opinions. But you know what? We all have opinions, and so we're all down here. We all have opinions, and most of us have cool case reports that might actually lead to stronger studies. And so you'll notice that this bar at the bottom of this triangle or pyramid is rather wide, because this really means that so many people can do this, and even though it's a low-level evidence, it's still evidence. it's still out there, and it might lead researchers to do further larger studies on that topic. It might also lead other healthcare providers to consider, maybe I should refer my patient for massage therapy. That might be something that's beneficial. And so even though it is weak evidence, and we acknowledge it as weak evidence, it still is evidence. And I still encourage people to consider writing a case report. So I want to go through just a very short abstract. 4 previously healthy homosexual men contracted pneumocystis cardiopneumonia, extensive mucosal candidiasis, and multiple viral infections. In 3 of the patients, these infections followed prolonged fevers of unknown origin. In all 4, CMV was recovered from secretions. Kaposi sarcoma developed in 1 patient 8 months after he presented with esophageal candidiasis. Now there's a lot of words in here that may not be familiar to you, but what does this sound like? Previously healthy homosexual men, they're having all of these odd diseases pop up. You know, what's going on here? You know what this was? This was the very first publication of HIV/AIDS. This was the very first time that it was an astute clinician that said, you know what? There's something weird going on here. I have these homosexual men coming to me with very strange conditions, and I don't understand. And so he presented this in the scientific literature for other healthcare providers to read. And what happened from there, I mean, the CDC swooped in and they found out it was a new disease, and you know, and it was a very big deal, and still is. And I'm not saying that I expect every one of you out there to find a new disease so the CDC can swoop in. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that sometimes these case reports become so important that they can really change things. I want to go through a couple of examples from the massage therapy profession. Here's one that came out in 2012 in the International Journal of Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork. The title of this was called Massage Therapy for Cervical Degenerative Disc Disease, Alleviating a Pain in the Neck. Now this was written by Rhonda Marie Avery, and she actually had submitted this for the Student Case Report Contest. She won the gold medal, and she subsequently got this published. And what this case was a 66-year-old female that came to her with chronic neck pain and limited cervical range of motion. The client had left shoulder and arm pain. And so what Rhonda did was therapeutic massage. She did petrissage, neuromuscular techniques, fascial work, facilitated stretching, and a few other things that she fully describes in the article. And you know what happened? The patient's neck range of motion improved moderately. There was a decrease in reported pain and an increase in functional daily activities. So you might be thinking, well, that's kind of boring because I see this every day. Well, the key is, if you do see it every day, and this is very common, and it's not something unexpected, but it's not in the literature, how will anyone else in healthcare ever know? I mean, this is really something that so many of you see. But if it's not in the literature database, other healthcare providers who see patients for cervical degenerative disc disease, you know, rheumatologists, general practitioners, primary care providers, they all might see this, and do they know that they can refer to massage therapy as a possible treatment? They may not. And so sometimes these case reports aren't as groundbreaking as, oh my God, it's a new disease. Sometimes they feel kind of plain. But that's okay, because we really need to get the word out that, guess what? We do this. We treat this. And it's not that we're saying, therefore, every single client that comes in with this disease is going to get better, but it's saying this client that came in did get better. There were no side effects. There were only benefits, and it's something that other people can try. Let me show you one more. This was written by Megan Thompson, And she wrote this in 2011. She submitted it also to the practitioner case report contest. She did massage therapy for Lyme disease symptoms, a prospective case study. So this is interesting. Lyme disease? Would you ever consider a massage for Lyme disease? I mean, this is the complete opposite. This is one of those things where, I'm surprised. Oh, I never really considered it. Okay, well, with her case, it was a 21-year-old female college student. She presented with pain and fatigue and impairment of concentration. And what Megan ended up doing was massage therapy prospectively, meaning she planned this out as a case report. She knew this was a very unique situation where this client came to her and said, I have Lyme disease, can you help me? And so she was very conscious of the fact that she was moving forward and that she was going to publish this regardless of what the results say. And so in this case, what she found out was that the Lyme disease symptoms were decreased during the treatment periods, but that the symptoms increased during non-treatment periods. And so it was interesting that as long as this client was getting massage, she was feeling good. But as soon as they took the massage away, she wasn't feeling good. And so again, I just want to stress that there are lots of different types of case reports that you can write up. Some of them are retrospective, some are prospective, and it's up to you to really think about and be creative as to how would you like to do this in your practice. I would be remiss if I didn't also present a few case reports that had negative results. So these are the kind of reports that are never very fun to read or to find out about. But again, they're important to the profession to know. For example, in 2010, there was a case report that came out, venous thromboembolism following vigorous deep tissue massage. So this person ended up with a blood clot that ended up as a stroke. Does that mean that if I'm a patient and I go online and I see this article and I want to get deep tissue massage, should I be scared I'm going to get a blood clot? Well, I don't know. I mean, it happened, theoretically, it happened to one patient. So could it happen? Possibly. But it's something that as a massage therapist we have to be very cautious about. We have to consider, does this person have any pre-existing conditions that might lead to blood clots? Here's a second one. Acute cystic rupture and hemorrhagic shock after a vigorous chair massage session in a patient with polycystic kidney disease. Okay, again, it's like, yikes, what happened? Well, now we know. Okay, if somebody has polycystic kidney disease, we may not want to be too aggressive, especially in the lower thoracic and lumbar regions. That might not be such a good thing. And so again, these types of case reports that are negative might be very beneficial to our understanding of things that can go wrong so that they don't happen to us, so that we prevent things from happening to our clients.
Jerrilyn?
Yes.
Tracy emailed in a question about advising massage therapists to talk about these type of things from a liability standpoint. Do you advise them to speak with their professional association before writing this? Because obviously they put it in print, they might be liable, right? Right,
and that's a really good point. Liability issues kind of fall to what does the evidence actually say? And with this is only one case. And with case reports, we can't say that it definitely was causative, that the massage therapy actually caused the rupture, the cystic rupture. But we do have to be a little bit more cautious. I'm not sure that legally somebody has to advise their client that this might happen. If it were me, I probably would, particularly if somebody has a severe case of polycystic kidney disease. But it's one of those gray areas. Mm-hmm. If there's only one case report, is it really true? Is there really this association between massage therapy and what went wrong?
Right. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. This third one talks about a case of radial nerve damage caused by improper massage for ganglion cyst. I was a little surprised when I read this. I thought, Really? Does massage really, can it really cause nerve damage? And to me, this kind of shows, well, has anyone ever treated a ganglion cyst or worked in the area of a ganglion cyst and things went well? You know, sometimes when we read these negative reports, we have to consider, is someone from another profession trying to make a point, make a negative point? And if so, do we as a profession need to counter it with a positive point and show that's not what always happens. I've treated, you know, these X number of clients and it didn't happen. And so again, I encourage you to consider when you're reading case reports and thinking about what you can write, sometimes we need to you know, step up to the plate and show what we have to show and describe what we have to describe. What was our experience with clients that had these conditions. Finally, this was a more recent one in 2012, spinal cord injury incurred by neck massage. When I read that title, I was shocked. I thought, now come on, that can't be possible. As it turns out, this client had a pre-existing condition of stenosis, and so the positioning that the client was in was enough to cause spinal cord injury. Now, and that happened during the massage. Now, would this have happened if this client was washing their hair or you know, turning their head quickly in the car or doing something else? Perhaps. But the way that this title reads, it reads as though if you get a neck massage, you might get spinal cord injury. And so it made me angry. I felt like I wanted to, you know, write a letter to the editor and say, come on now, this, you know, the way you describe it in the actual case report is not really what is insinuated by this title. And so some of these are frustrating and upsetting. And so really I think we need to make sure that our profession puts in the literature things that help the profession by, you know, rising it up and showing the benefits, as well as helping each other by saying, you know what, I did this massage on this condition and something went wrong. So we have to continually educate ourselves. So I'd like to do another poll. If you could please vote in this. What I'd like you to answer is, do you have a case that you would like to write up as a scientific case report? So as you're thinking now, do you have a case that you'd like to write up as a scientific case report? I'm curious to know how many of you actually think of one.
Okay, great. So go ahead and answer. You can actually do this on your screen as part of the poll, and we'll wait for 3 more seconds, and I'll go ahead and close it and share the results. Okay, great. And we got 70%. That's wonderful. And I'll share the results. And Jerrilyn, 38% said yes, and 62% said no.
Okay, so that's great. So we have quite a few of you who already have in your head, here's what I'd like to do. For the rest of you, I do think that we need to talk about, well, how do you actually choose a case? How do you, you know, think about this and kind of pick one that might be good, or what kind of case do you look for prospectively that you might want to write up? So good for you guys that already have in your head, here's one that you want to write up, and for the rest of you, just be patient. It'll happen. So choosing a case report, first of all, we want one that will potentially be interesting to other healthcare providers. Now the way you can judge that is, first of all, is it interesting to you? If you're bored with it, nobody else is going to like this. So try and not pick something that is completely boring, but you want a case that might be interesting to other massage therapists, to other healthcare providers. If we have, let's say, a client that you're seeing, a pediatric client who has, let's say, childhood diabetes, and you're doing massage and helping the child with some of their symptoms, you may want to consider, okay, other massage therapists might be interested in this. Other people who work with pediatrics might be interested in this. Other people who work with diabetes might be interested in this. So there might be lots of other pockets of healthcare providers that are interested in what you have to say. You also have to take a look at, has this been previously represented in the literature? And what that means is you need to actually go to a database such as pubmed.gov, P-U-B-M-E-D.gov, G-O-V, PubMed.gov, it's kind of like a Google for research articles. So if you want to look up where are the research articles on this, you'd go to PubMed.gov and take a look. And so if you do a search and you're looking for has there been anything written on this and you don't find anything, well then it might be a great topic to present in a case report and to submit. The other thing when you're thinking about a case is you really need a complete file. You really need to have good progress notes and have outcome measures that were consistently used and be able to read your own writing and have tracked all of these things. And so sometimes our note-taking isn't really the best. What I encourage people to think about is just treat everybody that comes to see you as though that's the next case report. You never know what's going to happen in clinical practice. You never know if something's going to go well or not go so well. You never really know, is this going to be our next a case report? So let's say you've chosen an interesting case and you know the topic isn't fully covered in the literature and you have a complete file. So what do? The first thing you do before you ever start writing is you have to think about who are you writing to. When you write this case report, are you presenting to your peers, other massage therapists? Are you presenting to other healthcare professionals like other rheumatologists or diabetes specialists or pediatrics? Or, who are you trying to write to? The way you write is different based on who you're talking to. If you're talking to other massage therapists, they're going to expect you to tell them certain things. But if you're talking to primary care providers, they may not want the same information. They may want different information. So you really have to think about who's the audience that you want to talk to. Once you figure that out, you have to choose a journal. Which journal do you want to submit this to? The reason why that's so important is because journals have different requirements. Every journal has what's called instructions to authors. And those instructions to authors give you the rules as to how to write your case. Most of them are between 1,000 and 3,000 words. So if you ignore this and you just start writing up your case and you end up with, let's say, 10,000 word case report, and then you decide I'm going to submit this to this journal, and then you look at their instructions to authors and they only accept publications that are 3,000 words or less. Well, now you have to delete a whole bunch of stuff that you worked really hard at writing, and that's unfortunate. And so it's good to know what are the rules before you ever start. So I encourage you to look at different journals and try and consider where do you want to submit this. Now when you access the instructions for authors, first you have to check and see, does this journal allow case reports? Not all journals do. And so you have to look in their instructions, do they even allow them? Then you have to read those instructions thoroughly. Now as I've said, I work with quite a few different healthcare providers in writing case reports, and I am always surprised that people don't follow the directions. If you submit a case report where you didn't follow the directions, let's say you send it to Karen and at IJTMB and she takes a look at it and you didn't follow the directions, do you know what's going to happen? She's going to send it back to you and say, start over, fix it, read the directions. And it's frustrating to the editors. And so I encourage you to read the instructions before you ever start so that you know how to follow the directions. I have a really cool website for you. This is from the University of Ohio Medical School. It's the Mulford Library. And what these librarians have done is they have this website. It's like a database of instructions to authors. So if you go to their database and you type in, let's say, pediatrics, it will show you all of the different journals that deal with pediatrics. And you can then link to each journal's instructions to authors. And so let's say there's Journal of Pediatrics. You click on that and you look at the Journal of Pediatrics instructions to authors. Do they accept case reports? No. Okay, so you come back to this website. What's the next journal in pediatrics? Well, let's say it's called Pediatrics and Adolescents. Okay, you click into that. Do they accept case reports? Yes. Well, there's a possible journal for you. So it's a cool website where you can type in different things. Type in diabetes, type in pediatrics, type in bodywork, type in massage, and just see what are the different journals. Sometimes you have to use different words like pediatrics and pediatrician in order to get all of the different journals, but I really like it. Now, I don't encourage people to go for it and to submit to a journal, a very high-level journal in a different profession until you feel really comfortable writing these. Most times, massage therapists will submit to journals within our own profession first, such as IJTMB, or Journal of Bodywork and Movement Therapies. And they do that because these journals are used to working with massage therapists in the field. So once you do that, and you get comfortable with it, and perhaps you get one accepted, I then strongly encourage you, for the sake of the profession, to consider going outside of our profession and into other journals to let other healthcare professionals know, here's what massage can do for that condition. So let's do one more poll. Have you ever read a case report in a scientific journal? So Brian, if you could put that up. Have you ever read a case report in a scientific journal?
Okay, great. So go ahead and answer yes or no. And while you do that, I want to apologize. I actually launched an incorrect poll last time. I think the answers were correct. It was just the question was different. It was actually that first question. So this one is 100% correct, and I'm going to go ahead and close it right now. And 75% of you voted. I'm going to share the results. Wow, 83% said yes, 17% said no.
Okay, so good for all of you who have read them. For those of you who haven't, now's a great time to start doing this, because when you're reading case reports, you're getting the flavor of what does a case report actually look like. What should it look like? What should be included? I mean, if those case reports got accepted for publication, that means they were done really well. And so you want to mimic that. You want your case report to look similar to what's, the structure to what's already been published. And so just as a brief overview of a case report is structured as such, typically. First of all, it usually starts out with an introduction, like I was talking about before. The introduction generally frames the case. It talks about some background as to that condition and how much does it cost in America with people who have diabetes and what percent of America has diabetes or whatever condition you're working with. And it really sets the stage for, and therefore that's why this case report is important. Now, writing this introduction is not an easy task. You really have to consider what might interest the reader. What do they need to know to understand the importance and the background of this condition? After that is the description of the patient and the treatment plan and what happened to the patient. So all of this is actually the case and the report of the case. And then after that comes the discussion. So what does all this mean? So you have this case and it's, you apply this to the general public, and what does it all mean? A lot of authors will include limitations of the study. And so the limitations of a case report generally is it's just one case. Could this happen in anyone else? Maybe not. In this one case, maybe this happened because they had co-interventions that they weren't telling you about. Maybe in this one case they got better just all on their own with natural history. They were meant to get better. And so we can't really say that a case report really confirms that massage therapy benefits this condition. And you have to write that as one of the limitations because it's the truth. But it doesn't fully discount the case because it still happened to this one person. It's still evidence because it still happened to this one person. And then a lot of times people will put in here suggestions for future study. Now, I'm a researcher. I sit at a desk all day. I deal with my research numbers. I teach research. I don't get to see the cool stuff that you guys get to see. And I would love to have you tell me, and therefore larger studies are needed in blah, blah, blah. Because I really get a kick out of finding out what's happening in clinical practice. That's one of the main reasons that I love working with people who are out there in clinical practice, to help them get these case reports in the literature. So All of this will be discussed in much more detail in future webinars. But before we finish up here and we get to questions, I just want to say a couple of kind of overarching important things. First of all, don't try and prove causation with your case report. Don't try and say things like, and therefore massage cures back pain. Really, with one case, we don't know that. And we need much larger studies excuse me, in order to prove that. So try not to prove causation or ever say, and therefore this cures that. Secondly, don't ever generalize your results. Don't say things like, and therefore everyone with back pain should get massage, because that's not necessarily true. And so anytime you do either of these, it's somewhat of a turnoff to the reviewers, because it's kind of overextending what the case report really is all about. The case report should be generating questions in people's minds. I wonder if this is true. I wonder if this is beneficial. And that's a good thing. But we never want to overemphasize the importance. And finally, mimicry is the sincerest form of flattery. And what I mean by that is, if you read other case reports, you will know what does it take to get something published. I want you to read as many case reports as you can before you ever submit for publication. It's kind of like if you go into massage therapy but you've never received a massage ever. You really don't know what it's all about. And so you have to, if you're getting into writing and you submit for publication, you really need to know some of the background expectations of what your case report is going to look like. So you might be thinking, why should I do this? This sounds hard. This sounds frustrating. Well, honestly, a case report might be the only published evidence on an intervention in a given clinical situation. You might be the only one to get something published to date on, like massage and Lyme disease. That might be the only piece of evidence out there. And so even though it's low-level evidence, it's still evidence. And it's important for our profession to get that evidence into the literature. Second, you might educate other healthcare providers or professionals regarding the therapy as a possible intervention. So you're telling others, okay, this is something that might help your patients, whether they do the treatment or whether you get referred to you, either way. But it's really opening the eyes of other healthcare providers. And honestly, research, even case reports, helps point the way to further research on the topic, leading to more reliable evidence. So we always want to see these big clinical trials done on different conditions, for different conditions with massage therapy. But we have to start somewhere. We have to start at the bottom and then move up the rungs of the research evidence. So here's your homework assignment. Here's what I'd like to see everybody do. I'd like you to think more about a case that you might want to write up. Consider the possibilities. Look in the research evidence. Go to PubMed.com or PubMed.gov, and take a look. Is there anything written on this topic? And is there room for your case? And then start thinking about, okay, you have a case. Who do you want to tell this story to? Who is it important that they hear about this case report that you had? More than likely, it's other massage therapists, but you might, again, be thinking about other healthcare professionals. So look at a few journals that focus on this audience and read their instructions to authors. So if you're writing to other massage therapists, again, you might want to consider IJTMB. You might want to consider Journal of Bodywork and Movement Therapies. There's lots of journals that you might want to consider. Take a look at their instructions and see which instructions you're most comfortable with. Then go to that journal and read a whole bunch of case reports that were published in that journal so that you can get the flavor of how they publish things, what actually gets accepted. When I write in research, before I get actually sitting down at my desk and writing, I frequently will pull out a research article and start reading because it puts me in that mindset. It puts me in that frame of mind where, okay, I need to use the more scientific language, I need to be very succinct, I need to have a point. I can't just ramble on. You know, it really helps me frame my brain, and then I get writing. And so if you can read case reports, you'll be able to see what do other case reports look like. So we have several different resources out there in the world. Again, I promote IJTMB. This is a journal sponsored by the Massage Therapy Foundation. But the cool thing about IJTMB is that it's free. You can go online and read every single article ever published in IJTMB, and all free to you. So it's free, open source. And the other cool thing about IJTMB is it is in PubMed. And so when other healthcare providers are searching on articles, maybe on massage therapy, they might come across the articles that are in IJTMB. And that's a cool thing, because then they're getting educated too. So I encourage you to take a look at that. As Brian said before, the MassageTherapyFoundation.org has a whole bunch of information on there for you. First of all, there's case report contests. There's one contest for practitioners, one contest for students. If you enter the contest and win, you win a couple of different things. First of all, you get money, and that's always a good thing, right? Second of all, you get to present at AMTA National, and so you get to talk in front of other people and verbally present your case. And that's a really fun thing for some people to do. MassageTherapyFoundation.org also has research literacy courses. Now there's two different courses right now. The first one is Basics of Research Literacy. This is part of Education and Training Solutions, and there is a fee for it. I can't remember the number of hours. I want to say it's 8 hours, and right now there's a deal on it. I think it's only $59 to take this online course and learn more about just the basics. How do I search? How do I critically appraise? How do I read these articles? What's up with these different study designs? If you don't feel comfortable with all of that, here's a great place to start, is this Basics of Research Literacy. Now if you're an educator and you're thinking, how do I get this information into my classroom? There's also teaching research literacy, and those are in-class, in-person seminars. Finally, there's a new thing out of Canada called Case Report Repository. If you write a case report, you can submit it to this repository instead of submitting it to a journal. And this will house lots of different case reports in the massage therapy profession so that it's searchable and we can find, has there ever been another case like this? So I thank you for your attention. I hope I didn't go too long, and hopefully we have time for a couple of questions. So thank you.
Wow, Jerrilyn, that was
Brian,
amazing.
Are there any questions?
There are. Can you hear me, dear?
Well, thanks. Yes, I can.
All right. Well, first of all, Tom had to leave early, and he wanted to convey his thoughts. His exact words were, Jerrilyn rocks. So
oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
I think he and many other folks feel the same way. So let's go to a few questions. First, when you're writing a case report, do you need permission from the client?
Oh, really good question. You should get permission from the client. Now, we usually get permission to treat, but we also should get permission to publish. And so you should ethically let the client know and have some sort of documentation that they did agree to allow you to present their case. Now, that doesn't mean you include their name and thank them by name and you have their face on there. No, all of that should still be confidential. But you should let the client know and make sure that they agree to it. Good question.
Okay, fantastic. Selena is asking about how many sessions are required or a particular length of time that you should be working with your client before submitting a case report. Can you just see the client once?
Oh, I love this. That's a great question. You know, it depends, which I know nobody likes that answer. But if you treated that client one time and it was like a miracle, you might only need one treatment to write your case report. Most case reports will have a series of treatments, and you know, it's kind of like when you're in clinical practice. Some people need 4 or 5, some people need, you know, several months worth of treatment. So it really depends, but don't feel like, oh, I only have 1 or 2 sessions and therefore I can't write this. That might not be true. You might be able to write it right away, depending on what happened.
Okay, great. Are there established methods or standards to allow case reports to be repeatable by other practitioners? I know you use the word mimicry is a great form of flattery, and Amanda's asking that.
Yeah, that's a good question too. Consider this. If a researcher wants to take your case report and run with it, did you include enough detail so that they know exactly how it should be done in the clinical trial? And if a fellow therapist reads your case report, did you include enough detail so that they can mimic the treatment protocol that you had? So I encourage you to think about those. I mean, you know, writing protocols for here's how I treated the client, it sounds very sterile, and sometimes it's not realistic to put down, and then in session 1 we did exactly this, and then in session 2 we changed it up and we did this, and you know, and Karen's going to talk more about how do you succinctly talk about what exactly happened in these sessions. But really good question. Okay,
great. And Nina kind of dovetails with that about the quality measuring and like how you measure the improvement, how it's statistically significant, etc. Will that be discussed in further webinars?
Yes, and you know, measurement is very important. I know I've been to a few massage therapists, and when I go in, some of them will, you know, they won't really ask the same questions each time, and that's a problem. So there's lots of measures out there, and I'm trying to think if there's a website. Maybe Karen will remember, but there's a website out of Canada, and it's free. And you can type in things like pain, and it will come up with, you know, here's the 20 different ways to measure pain. Pick one, and then use it every single time. So I think the most common one is like a visual analog scale or a numeric pain rating scale, where you say on a scale of 0 to 10, how much pain do you feel today? Some people will come up with their own way to measure things, but you know, you really just want to be consistent with the way that you're measuring. So Karen will be talking more about that.
Okay, great. And Jerrilyn, could you put the resources slide back up? Several folks are asking about where they wanted to make sure where they send them. I know you mentioned IJTMB. And then also about where to find the articles. You mentioned that Canadian site, but is there an American site as well? I know.
No, there's not. I mean, they're internationally accepting articles, and so even though it's housed in Canada and it's being run by the Canadians, it doesn't mean that Americans can't submit or look at what they have.
Okay, very well. And for clarity, you talked about submissions, and you suggested submitting to a massage therapy journal first, and then potentially sharing it with, you know, an associated or complementary association. Can you submit to multiple massage therapy journals as long as you follow their guidelines?
Oh, I love that question. It's a really important one because some people do that, and that's against the rules. So the rules are that you can only submit to one journal at a time, and once it gets accepted, then they hold the copyright of that article. And so you can't submit to several journals and hope that all of them pick it up. You only can submit to one at a time. If they accept it, great, it's getting published in that journal, and that's where you stay with. If they reject it and they say this isn't really right for our journal, or you know, we don't really like it, or whatever they have to say, what, you know, reason why they reject it, you can then take that article and move to the next journal and submit it to the next journal and see what did they say.
Okay, excellent clarification. Glad we asked that.
Good question.
Rosie is asking about university credentials needed. Do you need to have a PhD or anything or associated with the university in order to get a case report published?
Oh, great question. No, absolutely not. Case reports are typically written by people who are out there in the field. So if you're a massage therapist and you're treating clients, you can write a case report. You don't have to have any sort of special researchy degree in order to do this. But you do have to follow the rules, the same rules that everybody follows. But you don't have to have a degree, and you don't have to have an affiliation with an institution, because this is a clinical presentation of what happened to your client.
Okay, great. Let's take last question. This is from Tracy, and it's really for clarification also. She was asking about Megan Thompson's prospective Lyme disease case report. And how can I, as a massage therapist, distinguish between doing a prospective case report and, quotation marks, experimenting on the client? Is there a subtle difference?
Oh, you know what? This is a really gray area, and if you think you are doing an experiment, you really should get oversight from that IRB that I talked about, the ethics committee. The way that I usually tell people to think about it is take a step back and ask yourself, if this were just regular clinical practice, would I do this?
Okay.
If the answer is no, now you're starting to do research, and you need ethical oversight. If the answer is, well, yeah, I would do this, you know, just in clinical practice, this is what I would do, then the answer is, you're fine. You don't need ethical oversight. Really important question. Good job.
Okay, great. Well, Jerrilyn, again, that was fantastic. A beautiful overview and a beautiful introduction to the series. I'm very excited for the upcoming 4. And for those of you tuning in, the next webinar in this series is next Wednesday, same time, noon Mountain Time, and you can register for that on the ABMP home site. I'm going to show you how to do that momentarily. And also invitations will be sent out this afternoon for that, so you'll have your own personal invitation. I didn't want to create any confusion, so I avoided sending those before today's webinar. And I'd also like to walk folks through how to get the CE Hour and also how to access the recording of it. So stay tuned. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. But Jerrilyn, again, thank you. That was phenomenal. Really, really
Well, thank
important.
you, Brian, and thank you again to ABMP for sponsoring this. We really do appreciate it, and we hope that it's helpful to practitioners and students and educators.
Absolutely. We're honored to be part of promoting the Massage Therapy Foundation. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.